Hubris is an ancient Greek word, defined in the Oxford Dictionary as excessive pride towards or defiance of God, leading to nemesis. A more biblical definition would be Proverbs chapter 16, verse 18. Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. To see an example of this, we can refer to ancient Greece once again, and the tale of Icarus. Icarus was the son of Daedalus, a masterful inventor who worked for King Minos of Crete. Daedalus built the labyrinth where the Minotaur was kept, but he assisted Ariadne and Theseus to slay the monster and escape, so as punishment, Minos imprisoned both Daedalus and his son Icarus in the labyrinth. Naturally being an inventor, Daedalus plotted their escape, but they had to travel from the island of Crete to the island of Sicily without a boat. To cross the seas, he built 2 sets of wings from feathers and wax, and instructed his son not to fly too high, lest the wax melt in the heat of the sun. Alas, as soon as Icarus soared above the waves, he forgot the words of his father, and delighted in his own magnitude and prowess. He flew too high, and as his father had warned, the wax melted, his wings fell apart, and he plummeted to his death in the sea below. When someone talks about original sin, what normally comes to mind? For much of the secular world, a false narrative about sex is perpetuated. But the Bible itself takes no umbrance with sex or nudity, as it says in Genesis chapter 1, verses 27 to 28. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him, male and female he created them. Then God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth." And again in Genesis chapter 2, verse 25. And they were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed. Possibly this myth about original sin having anything to do with sex is a misinterpretation of the Bible, but it could be that it suits us to not thoroughly examine why it is that we fall. So how does the story really go? In Genesis chapter 2, verses 15 to 17, it says, "Then the Lord God took the man and put him in the garden of Eden to tend and keep it. And the Lord God commanded the man, saying, Of every tree of the garden you may freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat of it you shall surely die." Then in Genesis chapter 3 it says, "Now the serpent was more cunning than any beast of the field which the Lord had made. And he said to the woman, Has God indeed said, You shall not eat of every tree in the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, We may eat the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God has said, You shall not eat it, nor shall you touch it, lest you die. Then the serpent said to the woman, You will not surely die, for God knows that in the day you eat of it your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree desirable to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate it. She also gave it to her husband, and he ate it. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew that they were naked. They sewed together fig leaves, and made themselves coverings. So what is the original sin? The book of Isaiah, chapter 14, verses 9 to 15, has an interesting answer. "Hell from beneath is excited about you, to meet you at your coming. It stirs up the dead for you, all the chief ones of the earth. It has raised up from their thrones all the kings of the nations. They all shall speak and say to you, Have you also become as weak as we? Have you become like us? Your pomp is brought down to Sheol, and the sound of your stringed instruments. The maggot is spread under you, and worms cover you. How you are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning! How you are cut down to the ground, you who weakened the nations! For you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will also sit on the mount of the congregation, on the farthest sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Yet you shall be brought down to Sheol, to the lowest depths of the pit." The true story of original sin is the tale of Lucifer, a being who imagined himself to be God. He was Icarus flying too close to the sun with his flimsy man-made wings. It was Eve believing the lie that forbidden knowledge of the occult will make her a goddess. What is it that we see constantly plastered all over our media every day? What are we force-fed constantly by self-help gurus? We are constantly being told that we are God, or that we are Jesus, and that God and Jesus are simply concepts, not real. We're not that powerful, and even if we were, would we make good decisions with it? Self, self, self. Can you imagine what the world would be like if every flawed and emotionally volatile human being was a god? It would be a disaster. Not only do we not have that kind of power, but the very notion that we do is what leads us into dark places. It also puts a great deal of pressure on the individual to shoulder the burden of all their mistakes and failings. The $11 billion self-help industry has not cured the mental health epidemic, but it has made some people extremely rich. Telling people to fix themselves doesn't work. That's the whole point. That's the entire reason Jesus laid down his life for humanity, because he knew we could never pay that debt ourselves. The New Age likes to misrepresent a lot of things, but in particular they misrepresent Jesus. There's a misconception that the Old Testament is an angry God and the New Testament is a loving Jesus, but that's an oversimplification. Anyone who says that has not read the Bible. Both God and Jesus are love and life, and both God and Jesus are justice, conviction, and rebuking. In the book of Mark, chapter 8, verse 33, Jesus rebukes Peter, saying, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are not mindful of the things of God, but the things of men." Both God and Jesus rebuke sin. Both God and Jesus condemn evil. They do not tolerate our crap. We have to relinquish our pride, otherwise it'll remain the wall we build between ourselves and God, and the means by which we fall.